Hello, fellow nerds, and welcome to a special episode of Our Nerdiest Thing. Today is a bonus episode. We're going to be talking about the new release from Jennifer Armentrout, A Light in the Flame, which is book number 2 of her Flesh and Fire series, and book number 6 if you count all the From Blood and Ash books. We are going to be very spoiler heavy. We're going to be talking about the book as a whole, so if you have not read the whole book, just be aware we're going to talk about the end and all of it, the beginning, everything in between.
And the middle. It's going to be so exciting.
Yeah. But before we get into it, Mindy, will you do our nerdiest vocabulary, please?
This book comes with a very lengthy pronunciation guide.
Which means nothing, for the record. We'll talk more about that.
We're getting there. But I just pulled out a few that I definitely was pronouncing wrong, and I will tell you whether or not I'm going to pronounce them like that from here on out. So I thought the Fates, I thought it was Ere.
Oh, me too.
It's Airy.
Ooh.
Right?
Wrong.
Okay. That's the
false.
That's the least egregious one. Yeah.
Oh, no.
So the thing that Colas is chasing after, I thought it was Greca.
Yeah, Greca.
No, it's Gracie.
I was thinking Gracie in my head.
Why is it spelled these ways?
Right.
Why can't we just spell it normally then?
Why? Like that one I don't
Also,
get.
that sounds like he's chasing something off the Little House of the Prairie.
I was just thinking it sounds like a little girl.
Go get Gracie. Get her. Get her, Paul.
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
funny.
It's Greca. Sorry.
Yeah. The next one is the sea creatures that attack them, and I thought it was the Dakai.
Oh, I thought it
Yeah.
was Dekai too.
It's the Daiki.
No.
I kind of like that.
I kind of do too, but it doesn't look like that. Like I'm such a word nerd, and you all know
Right.
this.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know if I can do Daiki.
Maybe Jennifer Armentrout knows a language we don't know.
Maybe.
Armentroutian.
Exactly.
And just a few more. The city where Colas lives, I thought it was Dalos, but it's Delos, which that I can see.
Delos is actually in Greek mythology, isn't it?
I think it is.
Yeah.
And to me, it makes sense. That makes sense because life, and it's very sunshiny and
Right.
bright and golden. So that one I can get behind, sort of.
That's what she said. Or he. That's what
We
he
will
said.
accept Delos.
I'll accept Delos. The next one, I don't even know how to pronounce it with the pronunciation guide. I call her Ios.
I know it's like A-I-O-S.
A-I-O-S.
Yeah, but the pronunciation.
Ios.
Yeah, it's like
Okay, I have a
A-I-O-S.
problem because I always read these books and then I like to listen to audiobooks that I've already read,
Yeah.
right? And Ios is how they say it in the audiobook.
They also, well, I'll wait until
Yeah,
you get to it.
keep going. I've got more of those.
I know, yeah.
So, well, and here's the other thing. I'm just wondering if, now some of these are obvious, but like that one, I just don't know if they were like phonetics were right. I'm not sure on that one. The next, there's 2 more. I absolutely 100% will not be calling Serafina
No.
or Sierra.
Nope.
That's a nope. That's
Wrong.
a hard no.
Again,
pass.
audiobook is Sarah.
Serafina, yes.
And then the final one that is very contentious right now is our leading man. And I think I told this story before. I thought it was Niktos from the beginning. And then, everybody else was calling him Niktos. And so I kind of like jumped on that bandwagon because I thought, oh, I'm saying it wrong. Turns out I was saying it right, which I feel a little vindicated on, maybe a little bit, but I don't want to rub it in because here's the thing. You do you. If that's how you read that, that's you reading. That's in your mind. I get it that JLA called him
I disagree.
Niktos. What?
You can't do you. You say it the way I want to say it.
Well, then you
Deborah
better
way.
say it how the author wants you to say it.
I know, right?
Here's the thing, though. So in the book, in the pronunciation guide, it says Niktos. The audiobook narrator, who I really love, Nina Stinson, she says Niktos.
Wait,
Greek-
she says Niktos or Niktos?
I'm sorry, she says Niktos, which is, if you're like looking at Greek names, it's that it would be how
That makes sense,
Niktos is how you would say it, right? But then we heard in the Light and the Flame trailer her say Niktos, which kind of started this whole thing. And then Jennifer Armentrout actually did a live yesterday with BookBub. It was great, and she said Niktos on that. And I'm like, we can't have 3 ways. Well, we can, but not in this series, in the From Blood and Ash series.
See, my issue with whatever, like if the author has in her head the pronunciation that she wants, and that's fine.
Right.
However, it does not make any sense to me to have the author pronounce it one way and the audiobook narrator pronounce it differently.
Agreed.
Like
Right,
that
because
is very upsetting
to me, that's like, it's acting, right? Like these people are
Yes.
paid actors, and if you were in a movie, you would be directed to say the
say
word
it
the right way.
correctly. Yeah. Exactly.
So I don't know if it. And here's the thing, like if you're an author, I don't know how you keep track of all this crap, but like maybe she had to change it for some reason. We don't know.
I don't know,
But
yeah.
she did say yesterday she has a copy editor that keeps a Bible for each of her books because she's like, I can't keep up with all the lore that I've created. So
Yeah.
she said this person literally will read the book and like open this Bible that they call it and be like, nope.
they do that for TV shows
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Like, because
Supernatural.
Yeah.
Well, because if not, all of us crazies would be like, that's not canon.
Yes,
Forget it.
Yeah, that's not correct. And of course nobody's perfect, but these the differences between the supposed correct pronunciation but what the audiobook narrator pronounces is just like
It's very strange.
I'm just going to say what I say in my head,
And that's where I landed.
And now I'm confused. I might just say it a whole bunch of different ways, but
I
I
know,
can't.
I'm just
right?
going to call him Ash.
Oh, that's
I know,
a good
right?
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll just call him
it's actually Aish.
Ashe.
Asha.
Ashe, yeah. Let's do, I think it's hilarious to try to do this, but we're going to do a 30-second nerdiest recap for an entire book.
It's only 660 pages or something.
I honestly hope that it's me because I will be way faster than 30
right.
seconds. And that's what she said.
With Ash, yes.
I have not been chosen in a really
Yep,
long
it's
time.
me.
I'm just going to
Okay.
throw that out
All
there.
right,
All right, Mindy,
Mindy.
I've got your 30 seconds.
You have 0.1 second for each page. Go.
if
Just
that.
kidding.
Ready?
Feel very unprepared.
Go.
So they have a lot of sex, and she has anxiety, and he helps her with that. He can't love her because he had his cardia removed. And so, what the fuck are they going to do with this prophecy, or how the fuck are they going to get the embers out of her? A bunch of shit happens. A bunch of sex happens. She ends up in Colus's lair, and Addie's, who they thought was their friend, is not.
And
3
Nyctos
seconds
is
to
a wolf.
Oh yeah,
That's an important part.
You got all the main. Good job. That was really good.
I got all the sex in.
And it was a lot.
There was a lot.
There was a lot of spice. I said before we started recording I wasn't going to sing. And I've already messed it up.
You're a dirty liar.
I know. I'm sorry.
It wouldn't be the same if you didn't sing.
I guess that's true. Obviously, we're not going to be able to talk about an entire book. So we're going to break this up into kind of very specific reactions. So to start us off, let's just all go around and talk about either your favorite moment generally or your favorite twist in the story. So who wants to go first?
Can I have 3 short ones?
Yes.
Okay, because I could not narrow it down. My favorite part, like what I thought of first when you sent us our agenda, thank you, Whitney.
You're welcome.
Part of your nerdiest thing on our website should be like the organized one that makes agendas. So my favorite moment of the whole series is whenever Rain and Ector go, uh-oh, Daddy Nyctos is angry.
I like that too.
Laughed out loud whenever that happened because he's like this primal of death, right? And they all just fuck with him all the time, which
Yeah.
I think is really kind of great.
I
right?
love that,
And
yeah.
it, like, I will say when I read A Shadow in the Ember the first time, I was really missing Castile and his wit, and I feel like the kind of the secondary characters in this series bring that wit back, which I really enjoy. So number 2. My favorite, or I'm sorry, I only had 2. So I loved it whenever Nyctos goes pure primal the first time. And it reminds me a lot of Hunt from Crescent City, to be honest, where like he's got like these wings and there's electricity everywhere and he's kind of in this like feral state. And I was like, that's hot. I don't know why I thought it was so hot. But like, I'm just picturing like his hair blowing in the wind. And Dominique Wesson, who's this amazing illustrator,
I love her
she
art.
drew a picture of him that as the only way I can picture him now. Nyctos will never be anyone else but that to me. And so I'm picturing this like huge buff dude with wings like coming out of the sky. And I'm like, okay. All right.
I am on board.
All right. So I only had 2, not 3.
Mindy, what about you? What was your favorite moment or twist?
So I have a favorite moment, and then I have like a favorite overall overarching theme. So my favorite moment, and it's not even a moment, it's basically a chapter, is when she goes out there to train and they have this whole like repartee and all the guys are like ogling her and he's like about to rip people's eyes out.
I loved that so much.
It just was, I just loved, she's such a badass, and like all these guys, like
and she gets a cut in, which I love.
I know.
Yes.
So yeah, that was entertaining for me for sure. But my favorite like part really of the whole book, it's not really a moment, but I just love the way that Jennifer Armentrout weaves truths about anxiety into her characters.
Oh gosh, right?
So I have like my favorite quote. So when Sarah's debating whether to ask Ash more about Lethe, which is actually how you pronounce that, I had to look that up. The city that's right next to where he lives. And she's thinking about like maybe she wants to be his consort more than just in name. And so she has this inner monologue. She says, asking seemed simple enough, but I'd spent more time learning how to kill someone than understanding the basics of open, honest communication, or how to overcome this feeling of vulnerability that came with being open. I wasn't even sure if it was normal to worry about asking or saying the wrong thing like I often did, or that I couldn't get my thoughts, which sounded so right in my head, to come out of my mouth the same way. Would it sound silly? Would whatever I said come back to haunt me, to hurt? Talking things out always sounded easy, but the anxiety that the mere idea of it drummed up also seemed insurmountable. I related to that so much. I'm like, oh my God, she just put into words exactly what I feel, which I can't ever express in that way. It brought tears to my eyes. Then there was that scene where they're talking together and she asks him what it tastes like, what her anxiety tastes like, and he asks her what it feels like. And it's just so open and raw. He's constantly telling her how to breathe. I just really, really related to that. It just, to feel heard and understood is the most validating thing for someone who suffers from anxiety. And to see it written in a character, to see yourself in a book like that, I don't know, it just was.
Well, and to give that to a character who is so strong and so powerful, but still like has this very real side to her of dealing with the anxiety and the depression and the isolation that she's felt, over the years. I really, that's like the only thing that I can relate to with her. You know what I mean? Like I am a goddess, but not really.
I will say, and there's a little passage at the very end of the book, and I don't know if it was like this on Kindle, Mindy, but I will say I was shocked to see the mention of possible suicide in the book, because you don't really see that very often in this type of literature, because people are trying to keep it light and all of that. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, she was going to kill herself. And for the same reasons it stuck with you. I'm like, this is I'm glad that it's being talked about. And then at the end of the print book, there is a page where she says, like, essentially, Jennifer Armentrout does, I know this was awkward to read about, but it does happen. Here's the suicide hotline number. And I just adore her for that. It made my day to see that at the end of the book.
And that was not on the Kindle version.
Well, and the way that she kind of talks about it, there's a new, not to bring it down too much, but there's kind of a new way of thinking about depression and like suicidal thoughts that's like passive suicidal ideation, which is very much more that like, I don't want to actively hurt myself, but if I fell asleep and never woke up, I'd be fine.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Right.
And I feel like that's very much like where Sarah comes from and like how she thinks about it. She's not, it doesn't seem to me like she wants to actively hurt herself, but like she'd be fine if.
Yeah. Right. She doesn't care if she got
hurt,
right?
Oh
yeah. Whit, what was yours?
So my favorite moment is going to kind of move into like a quick little deep dive too. My favorite moment is when Niktos finally, and notice the way I pronounce that. Niktos finally tells Sarah that he wishes he had never gotten his cardia removed, because my whole thing, I kind of had forgotten about this part in From Blood and Ash, the book 2, the
Flesh and Fire.
Thank you, Kingdom.
I knew something you did.
I'm like, wait, what's it called? Because I remember reading that Kingdom of Flesh and Fire and being so frustrated with Castile and Poppy of like, you guys are very clearly in love.
Would
with
you just tell each other?
Yes, like just talk about it. Right?
I could go into a whole thing about why I like that they didn't though.
I felt the same way with Sarah and Niktos. And I'm like, okay, I know that you had your cardia removed, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. I know you had that removed, and I know that you're like, I can't love anybody. But you so very clearly are in love with Sarah. Like, yes, you are. Like, you don't need your Cardia to be in love with her. But I just really liked that, like, the idea of him, like, first of all, being very vulnerable with her, which he isn't always.
Right.
And sharing that really very personal, like a deeply personal thought, right? Of how much he cares about her. Like, I wish I hadn't done this. And he says, you know, if I still had my Cardia, like, there would be no obstacle to loving you. Like, I would absolutely love you and be in love with you. Like, it was not even a question.
Swoon.
So I did just kind of a little deep dive about the Cardia. So in A Light in the Flame, it is a piece of your soul that allows you to love and to move beyond just caring for somebody to actually love them, to be in love with them. Niktos, I'm just going to keep saying Niktos, sorry.
You babe.
He goes to the primal of love, beauty, and fertility, Maya, and she removes the Cardia from Niktos. Spoiler alert, Ios served Maya at some point in the court of love, beauty, and fertility, and was moved into Colus's court at some point before she goes to the Shadowlands with Niktos. And Ios is later in the From Blood and Ash books. She is the goddess of love, beauty, and fertility. So she is going to replace Maya.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah. I looked up Cardia and looked up to see like what kind of connection to Greek mythology. There's an ancient Greek word, which I'm not going to try to pronounce, but
It's
Cardia.
pronounced Niktos.
Yeah, right. There's an ancient Greek word that the word Cardia comes from, and it means heart. And it said it was often used as a prefix, which I was kind of confused by, like the beginning of the word.
Well, it's like cardiologist. And
Well,
all
right.
that,
I found an example like cardiakos pertaining to the heart. So this piece of the soul that allows you to love is really like your heart, right? So like it's a very emotional part of who you are. So in A Light in the Flame, Niktos has had this removed and is not supposed to be able to love. But the whole time I was reading it, I'm like, you very obviously love Sarah, right? And I felt like just being able to say, I wish that I hadn't had this part of me removed because I would 1000% love you. How is that different from actually loving her?
I was wondering the same thing.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like it's just
Is it the difference between love and in love?
It's like semantics or something.
Yeah.
It's like, if you know that you would love her and you wish that you had this piece of you that would, quote, allow you to love, then I think you love her already.
Right. And
you know
maybe
what I
that's
mean?
how maybe that's the loophole too.
Well, because Sir Holland at the very beginning of the book says a couple of times, like, anything is possible, even the impossible.
well, and then later on, Callum that tells somebody that he's only ever seen one time where love has conquered death.
Can I just say,
yeah, that's in War of Two Queens.
Yeah.
good catch, Mindy. Whenever they talk about like the guy with the gold wings painted on his face, I was like, that motherfucker's in this book. I know he is. And I was so
Just
mad.
wanna
I
punch him in
hate
the
that
face.
guy. Not in the
me
face.
too.
I want to kick him in the balls.
I kept thinking back to like Holland saying anything is possible, even the impossible. And I wrote down when I was thinking about this Cardia stuff, you know, by knowing that he would love Sarah if he had his Cardia, by wanting to have his Cardia back so that he could love Sarah, I wrote down, isn't that the same thing as actually loving her? He has all the passion. He has all the care. He has all the affection. He has all the concern. He has all the selfless giving, like being willing to sacrifice himself for her, you know, for her well-being, for her protection, whatever. How, like, what part of that is not love?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and going into the chemistry part with like, you can have good sex with someone, but having sex with someone that you love is very, very different in the way that it's described.
Well, and they both say I've never felt anything like this before.
Right. It feels very heartmates to me.
Yeah,
I'm
me
sure
too.
what
100%.
1,000%. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So I say, first of all, it's pronounced Niktos. And also, he doesn't need his Cardia to love Sarah. Like, he does love her, whether they're hermates or not. Like, he very clearly loves her. And we know, you know, thank God we know from the Blood and Ash books that Niktos and Sarah are together, right? Like, we know that's...
We know they overcome it. We just don't know how.
Right. We don't know the journey, but we know the destination.
Which is so
right?
exciting. I love
I
that
know.
she
I like
has
that a
written
lot.
these like this to help keep us thinking and to go like,
Yeah.
okay, it's going to be okay. Because you remember before we read A War of Two Queens, I was like, the consort's not Sarah. I don't think it's Sarah. And I was freaking out.
I remember.
You were like, actually, it is, because you had already finished.
I've already read the book
twice.
I'm glad you guys agree with me. Thank you. That he's definitely in love with Serafina. So let's talk about, speaking of love and passion, let's talk about your favorite spicy scene. Spice. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. I think mine's maybe one that not everybody would pick, but I don't know what it was about chapter 19 when she's in his bathing chamber. They're talking and basically she's goading him and telling him to like prove how he feels about her. And he's like totally resisting it. And then finally he just rips off his pants and she proceeds to pleasure him orally. It sounds like he's like dominating her, but to me, I don't know why I was turned on. And then he gets in the bath like half clothed, and I don't know. It just did something for me.
Really did something for me. Now, I will say it didn't feel dominant to me because Whitney and I have both read A Touch of Darkness series, and
where's that going?
That is some very dominant fellatio.
But I mean, she also asked for like she said she.
A little bit on the DF down there. Dominant fellatio.
But she baited him into that.
Oh,
like
100%,
you know, and so that's why it didn't feel that way to me. I think some people might see it that way.
I think part of the reason that you liked that, because this is why I liked it too, so maybe I'm just like outing myself, but I think that it's so very clear how much he wants her.
Yeah.
You know, and we've talked before, you know, in our regular episodes with Court of Thorns and Roses, like when it is so obvious that somebody is very attracted to you and wants you
that
and finds you sexy,
it's super
that is hot. Yeah.
Right.
Like, and in that scene, he so clearly wants her, and that's very attractive, you know.
Very
I think
he
that
does a good
plays
job
into it
of making her feel beautiful.
Yes.
And I know that we're going to talk about, is it Veses? Did you look that one
It
up?
is Veses.
Veses.
No, it's actually pronounced bitch.
I was just about to say the same thing. That's hilarious. When we talk about that later, I want to talk a little bit about her just commenting on Sarah's appearance. And so, I found that that's where, unfortunately, we as women have been taught to go first, right?
Yeah.
Just go for the gut punch right there.
Yeah.
So, I had trouble picking my favorite spicy scene. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to tell you what I wrote down because I was thinking about it, and I wrote all of them. So here, just to go back to what you said, Mindy, Jennifer Armentrout does a really good job of creating a mind and body connection during her spicy scenes. And, you know, sometimes there's not even sex and they can be very, very, what's the word I'm looking for?
Arousing.
Arousing. I was going to say erogenous. They can be very, very arousing. You know, I love the connection that she creates with her characters, and even the characters that hate each other. She's really good at that connection. I will say the one that really stuck out to me, and I wouldn't even say this is my favorite though, is when she is on his lap in the office and Attis comes in. How do you pronounce that, Mindy?
It's Attes, I think.
I'm going to say Attis.
That's how I pronounce it.
It reminded me of Rhys-Ann and Feyre, right?
Yes.
My mind definitely went there.
Yeah,
very much
But
so.
I did. It was kind of the same thing. Like, you are mine, and he even apologized to her for it before he did it, which I really, really appreciated. So I like their connection. That's really what gets me going.
Yeah. My favorite. I wondered if either of you guys would say the same thing as me, and you didn't. So I'm glad we all have different.
Is it because you're nasty?
No. I really, really liked the scene where she's in her room by herself and is pleasuring herself, and then like he's there as a shadow or whatever. And I think kind of the same thing that you were saying, Mindy. Well, the both of you were saying that he wants her. You know what I mean? Like, he knows that she wants him, and he's like kind of being. I don't know. I don't know what his motivation is for, like, not just going in the room like as himself, but going in as a shadow.
Really hard not to give in to that because he doesn't want to lead her on.
Yeah, maybe.
Like, he really truly is thinking, like, if I do this, then she's just going to expect
But then he's like,
else.
You know what? Let's go sit in the shadows.
Well, and not only that, like, he sits in the shadows, but then he like goes to her and she
shadow.
Yes, like
shadow bumps.
Yes.
she gets off because of him and what he does, right? Like it's not just her thinking about him. Like he does it for her.
I did find the voyeurism part of that very exciting too, though, to be honest. Right?
I enjoyed that scene
immensely.
Only because it was him, though. Like if it was anybody else, I'd be like, ew.
Yeah, it's
right.
You know, they always said there was a meme that went around when 50 Shades of Grey was out that was like, you know, this guy says all these things to this woman that are sexy, but they're like, it's only because he's rich and powerful. If he didn't have any teeth and lived in a trailer park, they were like, that would not be sexy. So, you know, it's got to be mutual attraction.
And with this book too, you know, Niktos and Sarah their connection is so developed, right? Like their foundation of the attraction they have for each other and like the mutual respect that they have for each other. If that wasn't there already, then I think it would be really creepy and weird.
Right. It would have felt very rapey almost.
Yes, like it would have been gross and non-consensual, whatever. But like because Jennifer Armentrout has written their relationship so well and they already have so strong of a connection, and we know that as the reader, it's not weird, right? Like it didn't come across as weird or creepy or like crossing a line or anything like that. Or maybe I'm just a perv. I don't know.
You're a woman that enjoys talking about natural things. It's fine.
Was it the episode of Friends where Rachel's like, there's nothing wrong with a woman having a little bit of erotica?
And they're like, oh, my coffee's cold. Can you warm it up on your loins?
On your loins? Yeah. Yep. So I'm going to move us in, if that's okay with you guys, to our least favorite moment or least favorite twist, because I know that at least Deb and I are going to have the same one, and maybe you too. My least favorite moment, and I'm going to read exactly what I wrote. Effing Veses, and then Niktos not immediately explaining the idiot. That's what I wrote down. That upset me so much. Like not just Serafina walking in on that and seeing it and being so deeply hurt by it, but the way that he handled it afterwards made me so mad. So mad.
I texted the both of you and told you I was in a bad mood for hours because he didn't deny anything, which I guess he couldn't. He was doing what she thought. I mean, they weren't fucking, but I mean, she was rubbing herself on him and he was letting her, and he did groan in pleasure. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, and that's what really got me. It seemed like did he groan in pleasure or did Veses? I thought he did. We're going to have to go back and look at that.
Yeah. I'm gonna look it up.
Are you just going to search in your Kindle groan in pleasure?
No, actually I'm on my second read of the book, but I'm not done yet. And I actually just passed that part. So I'm not.
Well, and I really was thinking about whenever that happened, how differently I would have reacted if it had been opposite as a woman. I felt bad that I wasn't as disgusted as I should have been at first until I switched the gender roles. And then I was like, that is super fucked up. Yeah. She's using him. She's pleasing herself, essentially, even if there's not penetration. And she's manipulating him into a very, intimate sexual act, even if it is a blood exchange thing. And
I mean, knowing that it causes
pleasure. Yeah. And it really, really bothered me, but it bothered me more that he didn't say, she's blackmailing me. And you know what I mean? Like, okay.
So I found it. It says Serafina's watching and is like, what the F is happening? She says that Veses, then she moaned, the sound husky and sensual. The arm of the settee creaked under Niktos' tightening grasp, and the sounds knocked me out of the shocked numbness. So Veses is the one that moaned.
Okay, that makes me feel better.
Because right after that is when they both realize that, like, she's there.
But then he let Veses laugh at her.
Veses...
The secret's out at this point.
Veses looks up and sees her there and, like, giggles and then is like, oh, is that her? And then, like, makes whatever comment and laughs at her because Serafina is, like, trying to get the F out of Dodge, right? And Veses laughs at her because she, like, stumbles. And it's after that she says Niktos, like, slowly turns his head and opens his eyes. And when she sees him open his eyes, she's like, I gotta get out of here.
But, like, also, like, he did... that description tells me he wasn't not enjoying it, and that's what bothered me. And maybe he was in his, because if you're a victim of anything like that, maybe he was in his safe space.
I think
right?
that's
right.
I think
so,
that's what we're supposed to think.
Right. And so I really had to
space.
think about it in terms of swapped gender roles for it, because I was like, I don't understand what's happening, and I was so mad at him. And
Me too.
He was a victim, right? Like he did do something, but not that he could help, and he was trying to protect her.
Playing a little bit, because this was also my least favorite moment. He's got so much shame around doing this, even though it comes from a place of protecting Sarah. In my mind, and this is where I'm going because it's my headcanon, he really struggled with not telling her. I should tell her because I know she's pissed off, but maybe I should let her be pissed off because she can't be loving me because I can't love her back.
I think he was scared that Serafina would try to retaliate, though, which
that's true also.
I'm not sure. So here's my problem with the whole thing. Like the reason that it makes me so mad and so disappointed in him is when Serafina is describing what she's seeing and like trying to make sense of it and what she's feeling, when she says that she starts to feel like the hurt and the pain, he makes a movement, like
flinches or something.
Yes, but he doesn't turn and look at her, but he like moves. She sees that he moves in some way, which to me suggests that he is feeling the emotion that she's feeling, because we know it's been established multiple times that he can feel when she feels strong emotion. So when she's standing in the doorway and looking at the two of them and feeling that like devastation of betrayal, whatever, and that hurt, he should be feeling that. We know that he can feel what she feels. So he should be feeling her pain in that moment. And then he certainly is feeling her pain when she like removes herself and goes down to the like weird dungeon hallway place. So my problem is you're feeling what she's feeling. You know that she's hurt. You know that she's devastated. You know she's betrayed. And so then when you go to talk to her, why would you not even like try to explain it? Because he really doesn't. He's just like, well, it's not what you think. It's really complicated.
Which makes him look like a huge asshole.
Yes, like he does look like he's being a huge asshole.
He is, yeah.
And it's like, I feel like you're smarter than that. Like as a character, you're smarter than that. You're more mature than that. And I know this is a complicated situation, and I definitely agree that he's struggling with his feelings for her and not really sure what to do about it. But I'm like, you're not this dumb. Like you have shown us through these books, you are not this dumb.
Let me say this, though, just to play the devil's advocate in terms of...
No.
Well, I'm going to anyway. Just, to talk about like victim shaming, I think, we would want to be careful about that. I think also we don't know the whole story of like what she holds over him or what was said when he left the room, right? Because Cola still doesn't know. Right.
True.
And so she could have said, if you say anything, I'm fucking going right now. Right.
Like
we don't,
in that moment.
Right.
Yeah.
Like we don't know what she said to him. So
That's true.
I'm hoping it was, some sort of manipulation like that. And, the shame that Mindy talked about, like he's been letting this go on for like a year.
Yes,
right?
that's true. At least.
Yeah. And so because someone, I forget which god it was, said, he doesn't do anything on accident. Right. And so one of them had seen her feeding from him the year prior. Belle had saw. Yeah.
Belle?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's easier.
In the audiobook, it's Belle, for the record. So,
Wrong.
Yeah. Well, if I thought it was Bella.
Yeah,
So.
right. So having said that, he was leaving the door open on purpose because he wanted someone to understand what was happening or to stop her, or because even Belle says, like, I don't understand why he's doing this. This is so unlike him. He doesn't let anyone feed from him.
There has to be a reason.
There's got to be a reason. And I think it was almost like a cry for help. Like, can someone please ask me what the fuck is happening so I can explain myself?
Yeah.
So you think he left the door open on purpose?
I do.
That's interesting.
Because he could have easily shut and locked the door.
Like with his power?
Right. Or even when Belle walks in on him a year prior, there was
that's
zero
true.
reason for him to have the door open. Even in A Shadow in the Ember, whenever Veses shows up the first time and is all up on him, he shuts the door.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? So, I mean...
I kind of wondered, because I'm in the middle of my second read.
I'm getting
of this,
mad right now. For the
I know,
record.
right? It's upsetting. So on my second read, I just read those chapters earlier today. So they go they're walking to like the pillars or the veil, and there's a Draken. Is it Draken?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know why I'm asking, because I'm going to keep saying Draken no matter what, no matter what you say. So, there's a Draken following them, like flying overhead, and all of a sudden he veers off and flies away. And Nectus and Niktos like share a look, and Seraphina's like, "What's he doing?" And they're like, "Oh, he's probably just going to check something out." And I, on the second read, I'm like, "Oh, is that when Veses shows up?" And he knows that she's showing up, and they all know, everybody but Seraphina knows that she has shown up, and that's why he, obviously Niktos is not there when they come back, and she's like, that's kind of weird. I thought he'd be waiting for us, and he wasn't. And I wondered if Nectus or like somebody else in the house left the door open or came and like opened it a little bit, knowing that she was going to come back and find them. But then I'm like, well, what's the motivation for that, right? Because even if Niktos left the door open on purpose, do you think he wanted Seraphina to walk in? Because he had to have known that she would be hurt.
I think he wanted someone to see, just like he wanted Bele to see previously. I feel like he is wanting someone to ask him why he's doing that.
Yeah, I guess. But then when he has the opportunity to tell Seraphina, he doesn't.
But I mean, if the roles were reversed, would you want to tell someone that you had been essentially mind raped into pleasing someone sexually all the time and manipulated? Would you want to admit that to anyone?
But I also wouldn't want the person that I care about to feel so hurt and feel like I've like cheated on them, when that's very much not what's happening. You know what I mean?
Unless he's pushing her away.
I think he sees it as a weakness, too, of not being able to figure out how to get out of it.
Yeah, figure out another way.
He's this primal of death, and he's super strong, and he's protecting Sarah, which is, what he's doing.
Right. Which, again, is more evidence that he loves her.
Right.
But, I mean, okay, so if he goes in and she's asking him, and he's like, I did it for you. I did it to protect you. Would she believe him?
True,
that might have made me more mad.
Exactly.
I'm not sure. Yeah, that's a good point, Mindy. It meant nothing. Situation. I promise. I slipped and fell.
I think me as a reader, I think I would be mad and upset, like, no matter what.
Yeah.
Right. Which, I mean, good job, Jennifer Armentrout.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, we're supposed to be, right? And you're supposed to, I think, hate him for a few minutes, and I did.
Yeah.
I was very, very upset. Castile never did that shit. I'm just saying.
Okay, so Mindy, you said that Veses thing was your least favorite too.
Yes.
Deb, it was also your least favorite? Did we all had the same answer?
We all agreed on that one.
Yeah. It was it literally ruined my day.
It was horrible.
Which is silly,
awful.
I know, but it really did.
It was upsetting, to say the least. So Mindy, I know you did a deep dive about the fates.
Yeah, they're not seen a whole lot in this book. Like, they're seen at the end of the last book and the beginning of this one. But that intrigues me because they're the ones that bring this whole idea of the prophecy to them, right? So I wanted to see sort of where the idea of the fates, where that came from, and if it was similar or completely off and she just sort of went with her own way. So it was really interesting, some of the things I found, and some of them even kind of are little, I don't know, Easter eggs or whatever to Akatar as well. So ties in with our regular podcast. When I looked up Aerie, there really wasn't a lot of info on them, but according to Wikipedia, they were associated with the underworld, and they were the Greek spirits of curses, particularly when a dead person curses the person responsible for their death. But what I found really interesting in that was there's a quote from an early writing of Aeschylus in Eumenides, and the quote is, "We are the eternal children of Nyx, Nyx, night.
I saw some of that too.
We are called Aerie in our homes beneath the earth." I just thought that was really interesting that name came up, and it comes up again. So then I went to the fates, and there's a whole lot more on them.
Yeah.
So I went to historycooperative.org. And
can I ask a question, Min? Are the Aerie or area or areola or whatever they're called,
right?
Are those the same thing as the fates?
Not in Greek mythology.
I mean, in this book.
In this book,
yes. book, they are.
Okay, but not in mythology. They're two different things.
Exactly.
And did you already tell us the difference? Did I miss that?
No, I'm getting ready to tell you about the fates.
Go ahead.
So in historycooperative.org, in Greek mythology, the fates are called the Moirae, and they refer to three goddesses of destiny and of human life. And human life is the key there, because they're really only over the humans. They're not over the fates of the gods or any of that. Go
So
ahead.
many questions. I'm like, are the fates of the gods so they're different than the fates of the humans?
I don't know in Greek mythology. I didn't go that far, but I mean, in these books, they rule over all the destinies, right? I mean, because all of them are part of that prophecy.
Okay, yeah, that's
They
true.
know
That's true.
the-
I'm just trying to wrap my head
they know
around
stuff
it.
about everyone,
And I'm
not
like,
just mortals.
surely, if I don't understand, some listener doesn't either. So
True,
I'm just going to ask.
true.
All right, carry on. Sorry.
So these sisters were named Lachesis, Atropas, and Clotho. Another Akatar alert.
They're also in Touch of Darkness too.
Oh, really?
The three.
See, I haven't read that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, sister, you should.
So if you don't remember, just a refresher, Clotho is the high priestess in the library at Valaris who had her tongue cut out and was tortured and saved by Mor and brought to Rhysand. So
My favorite librarian.
I know, she's amazing.
I love her.
So many early, okay, this is where Nyx comes in again. Many of the early texts refer to them as the daughters of Nyx.
Very interesting.
So that was just like really, but then later texts state that they're Zeus and the goddess Themis are their parents. So it's sort of up in the air. But I thought it was weird that Nyx came up both times in both of my things. But they're also sometimes called the weavers and are often depicted in white robes while weaving. They say they weave the threads of life. They're said to maintain the natural order of things by creating and measuring the thread of life. They each had a specific job. So Clotho was the spinner, and she spun the thread of mortality. So she got to determine when someone was born, as well as the circumstances of their birth, and then like everything in between. Well, not everything in between. The other one does the destinies. Is also the only one of the fates who is known to give life to the unliving, which I thought was a very interesting Sarah connection. Lachesis was called the allotter. So she determined the length of the thread of life, so as well as their destiny. So including any allotment of their misery and suffering. So she basically got to say whether you suffered a whole lot or just a little.
that is shitty.
I know, right?
Like that's too much power.
That's a little bit
Is
too
that
much
what
power. Yeah.
Veses does? I mean,
Right? And then the last one is Atropos, and she's called the unflexible one, which is a really unflattering nickname. So she was responsible for determining the way in which someone died.
Oh my.
She was also the one to cut the person's thread to end their life.
Yikes.
I thought, ooh. So she was I thought this was interesting too. After their thread was cut, a mortal's soul is led to the underworld by, this is my new favorite word, a psychopomp, which is Greek for conveyor of souls, and basically is a word to use to describe any like guide in Greek mythology. I thought that was, but psychopomp. I mean, I'm just gonna, next time somebody pisses me off, I'm gonna call him a psychopomp.
It does sound like a diagnosis.
it does. Well, I got the psychopath.
Once the psychopomp takes them to the underworld, they're judged there, and depending on that judgment, they are sent to Elysium, the Asphodel Meadows, or the Fields of Punishment, which I just thought was a cool tie-in there too. And they're usually depicted where in the different stages, like Clotho's the young one because she's the beginning of life, and then Lachesis is the middle of life, so she's sort of the middle-aged one, and then Atropos is usually like depicted as the crone because she's like the death bringer or whatever.
I feel like I would be resentful about that if I were her.
Being the old crone?
Yeah. My other sisters get to be younger, and I have to be the old lady.
No,
that doesn't
fair.
seem fair.
Someone has to be the oldest.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
That is true.
Anyway, I thought there were some interesting tie-ins. They're definitely very different from what we see in the book.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's similar in the fact that they do weave destinies, basically.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting choice for Jennifer Armentrout to have her fates know information but not be able to share it.
Yeah.
Because it's always like, it feels like there's always a little bit of tension with the other characters to try to like force information out of them.
Sir
you know?
Holland pushes the envelope.
Oh, for
way,
sure.
How does he not get in trouble for that shit?
He's walking a tightrope for
Yeah,
sure.
he is.
It's
Maybe
not
he's
the last
fucking
book.
Clotho or something.
I know, right? Like,
He's like, oh, I'm sorry, I told
She's
her.
got to get it somewhere.
well, speaking of him, I was actually thinking while you were talking about the fates, he obviously has something going on with Penelope,
Penelope?
the
Yeah.
goddess.
Yeah.
And so it makes me wonder how involved he is with, Isbeth and Poppy and like
Oh, gosh.
how she is named after
True.
that
Yeah.
goddess Penelope, and I'm like, what's the story there? You know,
Yeah.
like why
Yeah.
did they pick? And I've always kind of wondered that, and now I wonder that more. Like, why did they pick that name for her?
I feel like there's so much story to tell. And I will say in Jennifer Armentrout's live yesterday, which was Tuesday, this will come out on Friday, she did say that she hopes sometime within the next week she'll be able to tell us what book is coming out next and what order the rest of the books will be in.
That would
Yes,
be lovely.
that would be
Yeah,
great.
That would be great. Yeah, because I mean, she's got to have already started on the next
Right.
Blood and Ash book, right?
I feel like at this point, working on one of those books is also working on the other ones because
Right.
they're so connected.
They're so
You know what I mean?
intertwined.
Like, you have to think about them both / all of them, and not just like, well, I'm only working on A Light in the Flame because they're just so They're so connected,
Right.
But we'll
Which
see.
just like proves her genius. Like I don't think I could do that.
Well, I saw
That's why I'm not a writer.
on social media today. This is her A Light in the Flame is her 66th book.
Wow.
But you know what she said
That's
last year?
crazy.
Because like 60 of those were in the first 10 years of her writing. And she talked about how they're not, I mean, they are good books. I've read her other books. They're hilarious. She's got tons of great characters in them, but they're not from Blood and Ash. They're not. And she has said herself, when you're writing that fast, you can't stop and think about like mythology and all of like you're
Right.
just kind of pushing out your thoughts. And again, I mean, the fact that she wrote that many books in that short a time and
It's
they're good
amazing.
books says
Yeah.
a lot. But think of how much her writing has changed in the last 3 to 4 years, and she's only sending out 1 or 2 books a year. And she has said she was getting so burnt out.
Yeah.
And she's not anymore because now she's getting to like sit down and like really think about these things. And
Yeah.
it's exciting to see that in a writer because I think when you're in any artistic field, there's the pressure to get things
Right.
out.
Yes.
I mean, shit, we're sitting here right now going, okay, when's the next book? When's it out? When's it out? When's it out?
Yeah.
Right? And I mean, I would rather her have one out in 18 months to 2 years and it be really good.
And have it be good.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But not everyone feels that way.
So now let's talk about our biggest revelation of the book. So Mindy, did you have a biggest revelation?
I actually have a couple. One of them, I guess, maybe is more like a twist, but Addis's betrayal was interesting.
That
Or
upset
is it a
me.
betrayal? Like that's what I think there's something more to him. I think he's playing a long game.
Is he like the triple agent?
I feel
Yeah,
like
like I think
maybe.
of him like in Alias where
That's
she
what I was gonna say.
Well,
yeah.
obviously he betrayed Nyktos by taking Seraphina to Colas.
Yes.
But then he's very obviously trying to protect her from Colas.
by
at the
like
very,
being
very
like,
end of the
wait
book.
a second.
Yes, exactly. Like maybe she's telling the truth.
Well, and
don't
we
kill
do,
her. You know?
We do know that Nyktos shows up at the end of the book, so maybe he told.
Yeah.
Maybe
Maybe
he
he
told
told him to
where-
be there, yeah.
And I will agree that was my biggest revelation too, because I was like, "You son of a bitch!"
I know. I was really upset
How
about that.
dare you do that to them?
Yeah, I know. I was really irritated because I was really starting to like him too.
Me too. I
know.
liked him from the very
Yeah.
beginning. Like
Yeah.
when he
I
first
just
showed
liked
up,
his
I liked
swag and everything.
Yeah.
But my actual biggest revelation, I think, was that Colas had known about Sarah since her birth,
him. Bro.
and that had been biding his time and basically letting other people groom her into fulfilling the prophecy. I was like, what the?
Well, I
fuck?
also don't you think he also was strategically waiting for her to get closer to her calling so that her.
Well, yeah. I mean, he says that.
He
Right.
says that. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's part of
That's part of the
fulfilling the prophecy.
Right, but I did literally write in my book grooming.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like he
Yep.
definitely did.
Right.
Like he's the one that made her. Like he definitely goaded her into killing that Draken and then reviving it.
Well, and Callum is seen talking with her mother,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm like, what the fuck is up with her? Like
and what-
The
didn't-
mother?
yeah,
Oh,
she didn't
yeah.
do anything when Tavius was hitting her. She dismissed her all the time in the first book. And I'm like, as a mom, I don't get it.
I
Yeah,
don't either.
agreed.
I really hope that we get. I kind of felt like in this book, it's written in a way that we may never see the mom again.
I feel like it was brought up too much for us
Yeah.
not. I feel like there's
I
going to
hope
be
we
something
get
we
more.
don't know.
I would like to know more about, like you're saying, about the mom. But that was actually my same biggest revelation too. Was that like that Colas knew everything except for Satoria.
Yeah.
He knew everything the entire freaking time. And that kind of blew my mind because Callum, who we love to hate, he is somehow working with Seraphina's mom. He's working for Colas. They're absolutely manipulating the situation to have the prophecy come true in their favor. And we see Callum doing the exact same thing with Isbeth in War of Two Queens.
We know the prophecies can change, though, and they also know that. So they know that they essentially have to push towards this shadow in the ember, right? They've got to push towards this prophecy because they've got the knowledge that no one else
Which
has.
begs the question, what are prophecies for
It
then?
begs the question of if they didn't know the prophecy, would it happen? Right.
The prophecy is like making it happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Is it a
otherwise?
Is it a self-fulfilled prophecy?
Yeah, I think it is. So I did a little, I wouldn't call it a deep dive. I wrote out the whole prophecy. So one of the big revelations with finding out that Colas knew everything about Seraphina the entire time is that Colas is as far as we know, the only one who has the full prophecy. So everybody else has the beginning and the middle, and Colas has the end, right? So he is using his completed information, I guess, to try to manipulate everybody and the entire situation to have this prophecy come true in his favor, right?
Right.
So I basically wrote down the whole thing, and I'm not going to read the whole prophecy, but I wrote out the entire prophecy as part 1, part 2, part 3, and then was like, okay, based on all the information that we have from Shadow in the Ember, from A Light in the Flame, and from all the From Blood and Ash books, who are all of these people? Right? So the first part of the prophecy is the one that talks about the desperation of golden crowns, the great primal power rising, the shadow and the ember, a light in the flame, to become a fire in the flesh. And so I wrote down the desperation of golden crowns, I think definitely is Roderick Myrle.
I thought it was Isbeth.
Well, I wrote Elowana. It could be Roderick Myrle. It could be Elowana.
Not Eliana.
Elowana.
Elowana is Castiel's mother.
Yeah, and it could also be Poppy because she has a golden crown as well. I didn't even write down Isbeth, but that's true too. She's a desperate crown as well.
I would feel like she's more desperate than anyone else.
I mean, really, Sarah's technically a desperate crown. She should have had the crown.
And she's desperate to save her land too. The great primal that is rising, I think, is talking about Sarah and or Poppy. The false one, I think, could be talking about Colas. I think could be talking about Malik. I think could be talking about Isbeth. Two born of the same misdeeds, I think, could be Sarah and Poppy. Could also be Millie and Poppy, because Millie is born. Isbeth has relations with, I can't remember his name, Malik's brother. Iris, thank you. Millie and Poppy are full-blooded sisters because they have the exact same parents, right? So the same misdeeds.
And I did see something somewhere where Jennifer Armentrout said there's going to be more to Millie's story, which I'm excited about.
I am very
because
excited
she's so weird and I love it.
I know. Well, it's one of those things where it's she's so weird that you're there's so much going on.
She's the ultimate quirky girl.
Yes.
She reminds me of the
Manic
younger
pixie girl. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you guys do this. I have to picture who I'm reading about.
Yeah.
And she reminds me of the middle sister on Bridgerton that doesn't want to marry.
Yes.
Isn't that what you picture in her mind?
See that.
Because she's so weird and she likes to read and she doesn't want a husband. I mean, that doesn't make her weird for the record.
I know.
But she's just
I still haven't watched Bridgerton. So.
I don't understand
but she's the
statement.
But she's the quirky character.
Yeah, she's the quirky character, and that's who I envision when I think of
Side
Melissa.
note, when I envision Callum, I envision the bad version of Lassiter.
That's hilarious. No, I envision, who's the guy on the Hunger Games who is in, I think it's the second or third movie, who helps Magda when Finnick.
Yeah.
I envision Finnick as Callum. Yeah.
See, I envision him as being very flamboyant.
Has anyone drawn Callum? Any illustrators? I would really love to see that.
I haven't seen it.
Okay.
But
I'm putting in some requests.
Yeah,
when we get
I would
off
love
here.
that.
So it talks about the first daughter with blood full of fire fated for the once promised king. So that could be talking about Seraphina because Niktos is the once promised king. He's supposed to be the primal of life. Mm-hmm. Could be talking about Millie because she...
It could be talking about Malik.
Well, that's true too. But he's not a daughter.
Oh, sorry. I didn't hear you say daughter.
Yeah, the first daughter. This is not a daughter.
This is a long prophecy. I can't keep pronouns straight.
But yeah, Millie is allegedly heartmates with Malik.
Malik. Yeah.
Yeah. Malik.
I know, right?
Whatever. And then I think the second daughter, I think the only option for the second daughter is Poppy.
Yeah.
So then part 2 of the prophecy talks about like the last chosen blood being spilled and the great conspirator, the harbinger and the bringer of death and destruction. I think the great conspirator could be Colas. I think it could be Isbeth. I think it could be Seraphina, birthed from the flesh and fire of the primals, like that.
Yeah.
You know, they talk about Seraphina coming from the west to destroy the east and lay waste to all which lies between. I think could be talking about Colas, could be talking about Carcedonia, because Colas is entombed in Carcedonia. We find out at the end of the War of Two Queens.
I think you're too easily led to believe that it's Poppy for it to be Poppy.
Oh, yeah. No.
It's too obvious.
Well, somebody tells Miss Willa, I think, is the one who tells Poppy, like, they think that you are the great conspirator, but you are not. Like, somebody tells her that. I also think coming from the west to destroy the east is Isbeth, who is wanting to destroy Atlantia and also destroy Elysium. So then I am going to read this part 3, since this is the new part of the prophecy and it's not that long. So for the one born of the blood and the ash, the bearer of 2 crowns, the bringer of life to mortal, god, and draken, a silver beast with blood seeping from its jaws of fire, bathed in the flames of the brightest moon to ever be birthed, will become one. And the great powers will stumble and fall, some all at once, and they will fall through the fires into a void of nothing. Those left standing will tremble as they kneel, will weaken as they have become small, as they become forgotten. For finally, the primal arises, the giver of blood and the bringer of bone, the primal of blood and ash. So I think that the primal, or the one born of blood and the ash, is Sarah and or Poppy.
That the moonlight is what I got caught up on, and the fact that in a few minutes I'm going to talk about Nyktos being the silver wolf, right? But again, is it like too easy? Are we kind of
well, at this point, that's all the information that we have, though.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let me throw this out there too. When Keela comes to them at their coronation, she kind of gets a weird look on her face when he tells her title, where he calls her the brightest moon. Do you think she knew about this?
100% I do.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because Colas had to get the information from somewhere.
That's
right?
true.
Like somebody, as far as we know, he's the only one who knows it, but he got the information from somewhere.
Yeah.
So somebody else has to know it to have been able to share it.
But I don't think she told him.
Not necessarily, but somebody else has to know it.
Colas is very intimidating. So who knows who he hurt or manipulated into telling
or tortured
him.
or whatever.
Right.
So I wrote down the silver beast. I think obviously it's referring to Nyktos, which you're going to talk about more. I also think it's referring to Castile. And here's why.
Why?
Here's why I think
Oh, I love Castile.
So early on in the book, Seraphina goes into the woods and is like surrounded by all the shades, right? And there's a silver hawk.
Okay, so that is one of my questions that I wrote down. Who is the silver hawk?
The silver hawk that has those citrine eyes. And who else has citrine eyes?
Oh, wow.
Castile. And I'm sorry, what's his middle name?
Hawk.
Hawk.
Well,
right?
Hawk
And
from.
so that hawk is very much described as being like too aware and too intelligent. Like that is not just a hawk. Right? Like the way that it's written, and it's never talked about again, and it's not resolved or explained. But the way that hawk is written is that it's not just a hawk. It's somebody.
We know that Jennifer Armentrout has reincarnation in these books.
Right. So also in all of the From Blood and Ash books, Poppy beyond multiple times talks about how Castile reminds her of what a god must look like. So I think that silver hawk that was helping Seraphina with the shades is some kind of god somewhere and is Castile's ancestor.
Well, I'm wondering, is Castile a god and we just don't know yet?
Maybe.
Castile,
he could be.
They say I think they say somewhere that he's a descendant of Addis.
Really?
Because his horse's name is
I'll have to
Seti.
look that up.
He names his horse.
Yeah,
his horse Seti.
His is Seti. Yes.
After his descendant, I think she says something like, oh, he could be from Theon or whatever.
Yes.
But then somebody else, I feel like there's somewhere. Now we'll have to look that up. Yeah. But I feel like they said he is a descendant of Addie's.
Maybe. I'll have to look that up.
Well, I hope Addie's ends up being a good guy then.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, me too.
But that makes me wonder if Addie's is the Silver Hawk.
You know what, though? This is also, I just remember this when you said this. And this is what's so hard about this book being brand new and us not having time to really absorb it.
Yeah.
Is that Serafina keeps talking about Addie's dimples.
Ooh, I didn't even catch that.
I couldn't even catch that one either.
How his mouth quirked up, one dimple showed up. When he started smiling more, the other dimple showed up.
Maybe he's the Silver Hawk. And
that's
maybe
what I was
Castiel
wondering.
Really is like descending from him.
I kind of hope Castiel's a god. He is
that
to
would
me.
be awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and so then at the very end, like finally the primal arises, the giver of blood and bringer of bone, the primal of blood and ash. I think that's Poppy, because at the very end of War of Two Queens, Nectus says like, you are the primal of blood and bone.
Right.
Or bone and blood,
Right.
or whatever he says, which is the exact same word.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that this prophecy, obviously it's about Nyktos and Serafina, because like I said, we know that in the From Blood and Ash books, Nyktos and Serafina are like still alive and still, ruling and together. And so we know.
Like, she's sleeping though.
Well, but we know that we find out by the end of War of Two Queens, right? That she is like
that they've
the
continued
primal.
on there. Yeah.
Right. But I really think that this prophecy is like pointing to Poppy. All of this, I think, is pointing to Poppy, which I thought was really interesting, and I really love that. And that Silver Hawk thing, I was like, that has to come back with Castiel somehow.
Which, if you think about it, makes sense that Penelope's the one that saw it.
That does
See,
make
that's
sense.
what I'm saying. Like,
yeah, there's so much connection.
I mean, I'm assuming that Isbeth named her because it's her mom, it's her kid, right? But I'm like, why, and how did that happen?
Yeah, I'm very curious to see
the
what's
goddess
between that.
Penelope is so important.
Yeah.
In these, even though she's not there alive, she's very important in these books.
Well, and here's what I find interesting about that too: is when Penelope is described, she's described just like Poppy.
I know.
Yeah.
And she's not related to them as far as we know at this point.
Yeah.
Because I think she has like Nyktos's hair coloring or whatever, and like Millie is described very much as looking like Serafina, but Poppy, like when she goes and meets with Nyktos in the Crown of Gilded Bones, he says, you are so like her, like she's gonna be so excited that you are exactly like her.
Which I love so
know.
much.
I
Wouldn't it
do
be
too.
so cool to be like, I've been asleep for thousands of years. Here's your great 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 granddaughter who is just like you.
It's actually just her granddaughter.
Oh, really?
Because Malik and Iris are her kids.
Oh, I keep forgetting how old they are.
Right. So Poppy is her granddaughter and Nyktos' granddaughter.
Can you imagine just being like, yeah, my grandma's primal of life.
The fact that he is the only one, as far as we know so far, that knows this third part of the prophecy is just really interesting to me, because where did that come from? How does he know that? Who told him that? Who else knows that? Because like you said, I think Keela probably, it seems like she knows, right?
I feel like she does.
But I also think it's just a really interesting writing choice for Jennifer Armentrout to have Colas have known all of this stuff the entire time, because it adds such a depth of emotion to how he's manipulating everybody and how he's like screwing everybody over all the time. I just thought it was a really interesting
Well, and then you're like,
choice.
oh shit, he's one step ahead of us.
Always. At least one step ahead.
Well, just like Isbeth was too, right?
Exactly.
Well, but she had Colas's help, basically, because
Exactly.
Callum, we find out in War of Two Queens, Callum is there telling her probably everything that she
he
needs to
knew,
know.
yeah.
Who's going to kill that motherfucker? I'm excited about that.
I hope Poppy.
I hope it's Poppy.
Maybe
hope she does,
Serafina and Nyktos will
Ooh,
get
yeah.
to
I
go.
kind of hope they like stab him in the dick or something.
I know,
That'd be
right?
fun.
That I hate him. He's the worst. Deb, I know you did a deep dive since we were talking about the Silver Beast.
Yeah, I actually put this in a couple of the Jennifer Armentrout fan groups, including the one that like her assistant or editor hosts online, that was like, don't read the bonus chapter that was sent as a pre-order incentive from Shadow and the Ember before you read the end of A Light in the Flame, because I went back and I was like, ooh, a bonus episode. That's what we're doing right now. A bonus chapter, and then it like immediately opens with his wolf, right?
Yeah.
Like his wolf trying to come out and do all these things. And I was like, okay, that's knew. And then all of a sudden at the end of the book, it's like, and then a silver wolf was standing there, and I was like, son of a bitch. Like, it ruined it for me a little bit. So I wish I had finished the book before I got that pre-order incentive, but there was no way for me to know that. So a couple of things I wanted to talk about around wolf lore and wolven lore that really stuck with me in terms of talking about Nyktos. So in the lore of wolves understand the order of things, the balance of harmony and discipline, much like the balance that's needed in the primal of life and death, right? A coy wolf or wolf dog in the lore represents a warning that one needs to adapt to their current situation and that significant changes are needed to restore balance in their life, which I thought was also really neat. There can only be one alpha wolf, and the way you become an alpha is by winning the title, by winning a contest or a battle. So we know that, between Kolis and Nyktos, there can really only be one alpha, because I'm assuming Kolis must have some sort of shape-shifting capability.
She keeps talking about how they have that wolf picture on their doors and stuff like that.
Right,
both
right.
of them.
So, and that was a really big revelation for me. The fact that Nyktos is, I don't know if he's a wolf or he's a shapeshifter, or if that's something all primals can do, and that's an ongoing question that we have. So, in wolven lore, most wolf forms are considered a curse. So I'm wondering what that means for Nyktos. Is he a wolf because of him not being in his right primal state? Is that why that happened? Or can all primals shift? It was such an interesting thing to add at the end of this book because it's brand new in this world, in the Shadow and the Ember world, that I'm wondering why he has that capability. We haven't seen that anywhere else.
He does try to resist it too, in his POV.
Right.
Like he's definitely trying to.
Which I've not finished yet, by the way.
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
I've not finished it yet. Okay.
It reminds me a lot of Akatar, of the High Lords have like a beast form, and Rhysand talks about trying to he doesn't like being in that form. It's kind of it feels like the same thing.
Right. So a particular point of interest that I found is, we talk a lot about the gods in this book and primals and godlings and all this. So in ancient Greek mythology, which we are seeing a lot in this book from Jennifer on this, the ancient Greeks associate wolves with the sun god, which is Apollo. And Apollo is known as the god who wards off evil. Now, here's what I find so fascinating about Apollo. Apollo's main weakness is love.
Ooh.
So, in mythology, Apollo's heart is pierced with a golden-tipped arrow by Cupid, inflaming his love for Daphne, who you normally see depicted with him in sculpture. She's the one that was turned into a laurel bush. So, his heart is pierced with a gold-tipped arrow. In turn, Daphne's heart is pierced by lead, creating an aversion to love.
Oh.
I swear to God, if that is the twist, I'm going to lose my shit. He better not start loving her.
And then she stops loving him.
So here is why I'm worried about this. Daphne is known as Apollo's consort in all of Greek mythology.
Boo.
Now I'm scared.
I know. So the other thing about Apollo, because Apollo was known for having many, many lovers, he had a lover named Cassandra, who he cursed. She was a prophet or a seer, and he cursed her so that her true prophecies would not be believed by the world. Which again, in the From Blood and Ash series, you're like, well, how much stake are we putting into this prophecy? And what does it really mean and all that? And we've seen all of it come true so far, right? And so I like the parallel between Nyktos and Apollo.
Cassandra is the one that was the Trojan horse.
I don't know. Is she?
I think it is the Trojan War. She tried to warn all of them.
Oh, okay.
That's interesting.
But
Did you just call her a Trojan whore?
No. No, she tried to warn them about the Trojan horse.
Okay, so here is a question that I have. So because my main thing when it first said Silver Wolf, I was like, well, who's the Silver Hawk? That's what I need to know next, right? So my question is Nyktos the first wolven to bow to the primal notum, to bow to Sarah like the Keo wolves do to Poppy? Where do these Keo wolves come from? I just think it's too much of a parallel that he's a wolf
Yeah, well, I think that in one of the From Blood and Ash books, Kieran or Castile tells Poppy that Nyktos is the one that created the woman.
Yeah.
Right. So my question is, do you think he was the first one and, kind of pass that primal notum on so that the primal, like the future primals had backup essentially? I think that could be kind of cool.
Well, I think that what they tell us is basically yes, like what you just said. In From Blood and Ash, they say he created the Wolven to be like protectors of like the godlings and the children of the gods, right?
So I'm excited to see if that notum snaps for him though, to Sarah.
Yeah.
Like, and maybe that's what fixes the cardia later on, is that the notum snaps into place.
Well, I actually think that Nyktos is not the one that created the Wolven at all. It has to be Seraphina because she's actually the primal of life.
Oh, that's
so
a good point.
He wouldn't. In my theory, Nyktos would not be able to actually do that because he is not actually the primal of life.
And isn't she?
But he takes the credit because she wants him to.
It's not
right, and he pretty much is like, no one knows her name.
Right.
He's protecting her
Right.
always.
Isn't she also bonded, so to speak, to the Draken? That's why their eyes turn
Yes.
blue and all
I mean,
that.
because
so, like,
that's
she's
kind of the
already- that's
notum.
kind of like a primal
Right.
notum. Yeah.
Right.
Which is the same thing that happens with Poppy.
So is
Yeah.
it the kind of thing where it's like, well, shit, like all of our Draken are getting killed. What's another species of
Yeah.
animal
Right.
that
Yeah.
could help the primals? Because and just the wolf is so prevalent to him, right? We've not really seen that yet. So I'm really excited to see where that goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Well, and in my theory, if Seraphina's the one that creates the Wolven, it would make sense to me that she would like pay homage to Nyktos.
To the wolf.
Right.
Yeah, to him. you
God,
know?
all I want to do is go reread this book right
I
now.
know.
And I just finished
I know,
it 2
me
days
too.
ago.
I just had one quick thing that I noticed. Somebody posted on Facebook, and I just thought it was so cool, like such a cool Easter egg. She says, Nectus says that lilacs near water are a portal to Delos. And then Nyktos mentions portals in Pompeii and Spessa's End.
Yep.
So fast forward to Spessa's End when Poppy and Castile go to his caverns, and there are lilacs everywhere.
Near the water.
Yes.
Remind
That's
me
gotta be
what-
a portal to
Remind me
Delos.
what
Yeah.
Delos is.
Delos is the court of Colas. It's a city.
Okay.
The
that
primal of life's court.
Okay, which is where really would be Seraphina's court.
Exactly.
Oh, that's a cool
Anyway, I
tie-in.
thought that was a
Yeah.
really cool Easter egg. I cannot take credit for it. Somebody posted that on Facebook, and I just thought it was
Thanks
so
to whomever that
interesting.
was.
So what grade would you guys give the book overall?
I gave it a B plus, and I'll tell you why. Like, I loved it, I really did, and I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads. It did drag along at times, and the like, will he, won't be able to love kind of stuff felt a little draggy to me, but it definitely left me excited about the next book. I'm looking forward to learning more about the wolf, and also I think the last oracle. They mentioned that so many times. The last oracle. I think it's going to come into play, and I'm gonna hot take. I think it's Willa.
I hope so.
I think it is too.
Yeah.
And I kind of wonder if Willa is related to Poppy somehow because they talked about the Balfour family having, like a seer or whatever in their family line, which I think opens up a whole new thing to her, who she thought were her parents,
Right.
right? And like why they were really together and like why they decided to leave and all that stuff.
Yeah, if they were
I-
seers, they would know to take her.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I thought I kind of did the same thing, Mindy. I said an A minus. I really, really loved it, and I really am excited for the next one. But it really bothered me that I felt like nothing got wrapped up. Like it almost felt like a placeholder.
It's
kind
definitely
of
a
book.
middle book.
Yes, like
Yeah.
nothing got resolved. Like nobody got their cardia back. Nobody said I love you. Nobody got ascended. You know what I mean? Like it was just more.
Well,
I mean,
Ios got ascended.
She is officially Nyktos' consort. So I guess that
Yeah.
got resolved. But I just have so many more questions, and sometimes that really annoys me. In a series
Yeah.
with movies, with books, whatever, where it's like, could you have done a little bit more and then also raised these questions?
So for the same reason, I gave it an A plus. I really love that there is so much to unpack because it's thought-provoking. I mean, shit, it's had us talking about it for over an hour and 20 minutes at this point. I love that there is so much left to the imagination and the excitement of waiting for the next book. I love that. So I have to admit, the first time I read Shadow in the Ember, I gave it 3 stars because I had just come off reading From Blood and Ash the first time and loved it. I mean, I might venture to say that From Blood and Ash isn't like my top favorite series of all time at this point. So I really wanted more of Poppy and Castile. And I didn't realize at the moment that the parallels between Sarah and Poppy were because they were related to each other. And I was like, okay, we've already read this. And I was kind of irritated. So I went back and reread it to prepare for this book and changed my Goodreads score to 4 because I was like, oh my God, this book is so good now that I'm not thinking about Poppy and Castile all the time. Having said that, I gave it 5 stars because I love that it was a continuation of building on their relationship, and it gave us more to look forward to in the other series. And I don't mind that there were a lot of questions. I think it's really thought-provoking because if it had been tied up, I would have been like, okay, well, I guess the next book will be fun.
Hopefully, unless there are going to be 4 Flesh and Fire books, and then maybe nothing will still get resolved.
But I'm okay with that because I found it to be really, really exciting. You know what I mean? And
it was really good.
It was very entertaining too.
It was, and I will say the only reason it might go from like an A+ to an A- for me, and Whitney, I told you this the other day, I did not like that the beginning of the book just picked up in the conversation from the end of Shadow in the Ember because I really struggled to get into the book because of that. Because I was like, wait a second, even though I had just read Shadow in the Ember again, I couldn't remember the particulars of the conversation. Yeah. So I needed some sort of recap somewhere. And it was just like, okay, this book's over and this book is starting. And we're still talking about this. And so that was a little confusing to me. So if you've not read the book in a year, I can't imagine what that would be like, because a lot of people don't do rereads. That's right. True. Yeah. So that would be my only criticism, but A+ all around for me. It was really, really fun.
It was good. I think we all
definitely enjoyed it.
Yeah. It was a fun read.
I'm a harsh critic.
I am too sometimes.
I very rarely give something so. B+ is very respectable.
I've been a 5-star whore this year. If you're on my Goodreads, I'm like, okay, the bonds that tie. We've got the Invisible
I can't wait
Life.
to start that. That's my next read.
And here's the thing: it's light and fun, and like the world building is not like this in any means. But I just really like it because I like the characters in it. But I gave 5 stars to the Invisible Life of Addie LaRue.
I did love that book too.
I started some other series I gave 5 stars to King of Battle and Blood by Scarlett Sinclair. I've been a little whorish with my Goodreads this year. I read a lot of good stuff.
I was going to say, maybe you've just read a lot of great things.
I do a lot of 4s. Like the only 5-star books that I can think of for me would be A Court of Mist and Fury and A Court of Silver Flames. Like those are my 5 stars.
Here's the thing: your book read count on Goodreads is not right because you don't put that you've reread that every time.
No, that's true.
I do.
I count it once, like when I reread it once.
Even when you're on Goodreads, it says rereads count. They do.
I know.
And I will be honest, I read From Blood and Ash almost exactly a year ago.
Yeah.
Maybe like 11 months ago. And Goodreads was like, 4th read. And I was like, yeah. Because it is much like ACOTAR, which I've also read 4 times.
Right.
There's so much world in there that you need to digest.
I just didn't want to count my rereads because I didn't want to have like my whole reading goal for 2022 be like all ACOTAR.
But you hit your goal. And I'm so goal oriented. I'm like, but you hit your goal, Whit.
I know. I did. Yeah. No, I did. But yeah. Anyway, so let's talk about our nerdiest thing of the week. Who wants to go first?
I can go.
Okay.
So my daughter, who just turned 15, has been begging me to watch Supernatural forever. And during the pandemic, we started binge watching a show together every night, like an episode. So it started with Gilmore Girls, which was so fun. And then we watched Alias and we watched a little bit of Lost. That's hard to binge watch, you guys.
Yes,
that is hard.
We couldn't get through it.
That's a lot.
Then we watched Veronica Mars and New Girl. And so we started Supernatural last night. And it's so fun because if you've listened to this podcast, you know that the three of us are like major supernatural nerds. And my daughter looked at me earlier and goes, maybe we could go to a con next year.
Oh.
And like, seriously, like the Grinch, my heart grew 3 sizes. And I'm like, I would love to take you to a con.
That would be so cool.
I literally look at her as like, we're not doing GA, we're doing copper, and we're going to do this. And we're gonna, but I love watching it new through someone else's eyes, because that show at this point is almost 20 years old.
I know.
Right. And, I got to
holds
kind
up, though.
of, right. I got to watch it with the both of you. Right. And it's so exciting to see this new generation coming into it.
That's
And
awesome.
She did just watch Stranger Things, which has amazing special effects. And she looked at me, and we're on episode 2 of Supernatural. And she goes, are all the special effects this bad? And I was like,
don't let her watch Buffy.
I know. Right. I know.
But like you said, it's almost 20 years
Yeah.
old.
Right,
So,
right.
I mean,
And they don't focus as much on those special effects on the newer episodes either. That
no.
are, what, at this point, 3 or 4 years old. So,
Yeah.
so Supernatural.
that's really
is my
fun.
That's really
thing.
cool.
Will you tell us about our cocktail?
Oh, yes. Thank you. It's called The Corpse Reviver, because in this book, you know that Serafina does revive some
Yes, she
people,
does.
which I will say, can I just add in how sad I am about Hector?
Me
How
too.
I know.
She didn't even get a chance to try. And
I
gosh, I
know.
loved him so
I did
much.
too.
But I mean, like, it can't be all sunshines and rainbows all the time.
But also, I looked it up in War of Two Queens. Thad, that she brings back to life, is all over War of Two Queens.
Really?
Oh.
Okay, cool.
He's one of the Draken that like comes and helps Poppy,
that's
and
awesome.
Fun.
he's there at the end battle with Isbeth, and
Good.
he stays in the mortal realm with Nectus
Right.
when
Okay.
Reaver leaves and takes Malik back to
Nice.
Okay.
Elysium.
So with the Corpse Reviver, I will warn you, have a DD or plan on staying where you are. It is like 98% alcohol.
That
So
is
it's really good.
an accurate statement.
What's yours?
My nerdiest thing of the week is getting the pre-order incentives for A Light in the Flame. I got a cool Light in the Flame bookmark, and then which I'm using for my ACOTAR book. And then I read the Niktos POV chapter from A Shadow in the Ember, which I feel proves my theory correct that
Can
he
you send that to us?
absolutely loves. Yeah, the Niktos POV. The same one.
same one.
I'm
It's
so,
the
I
same
thought
one
you said
that you-
Nectus.
No,
which,
Niktos.
Which again, Jennifer Armentrout, someone asked her in the interview yesterday, because you could do like a Q&A, and the moderator was, and they said, is there a relation between Nectus and Niktos, their names being so alike? And she goes, poor planning. And I'm like, well, we also have Iloana and Ileana.
Ileana, yeah.
Right.
Malik and Malek. I'm like, or how do you
Malik.
Malik.
Yeah.
I'm like, can you just not?
Right.
Yeah.
Like mix it up a little bit more.
Right.
But yeah, I think that POV, like where he talks a lot of the same kinds of things that Serafina talked about. Like it feels like more. It
Yeah.
felt like more. And I'm like, you love her.
Damn it.
What about you, Mindy?
Well, my nerdiest thing actually involves both of you. That we all got a hotel room and spent a night in a hotel room reading A Light in the Flame. I thought it was super fun.
It was really
with our friend Holly.
Who we're trying to get to come and sit in one night,
know.
and she refuses, which is fine. We were trying to just get her to come here and drink the cocktail tonight, but it's right before the holidays, so
Yeah.
it was really fun.
It was
was
super
very
fun.
Yeah, I mean, the listeners probably don't know this, but we take a trip together every year, and then last year we started this hotel thing with the War of Two Queens, and even Holly looked at me the other day and she goes, "It doesn't matter if a book's coming out next year, right?" And I was like, "No, it
No, it
doesn't.
doesn't.
This
Yeah,
is our
we'll just
November
do it.
thing."
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I really enjoyed this book a lot, and it was really nice to have that space.
Yes.
I love my kids, but they do not want me to sit quietly and read.
Right.
It was
You can
really
love your
nice.
kids.
It doesn't
and need to
get
be
better
away
when
from
they're
it.
Yeah,
17 either.
Yeah. Don't tell me that.
Sorry. I Dawson was a very talkative toddler, and then he became a moody like middle schooler, and then now all of a sudden he's a huge talker, and he'll like I don't, and I'm not gonna be like, no, I'm not gonna hang out with my 17-year-old son, because
Right.
I'm gonna like cherish that shit.
Right.
But damn if I'm not always reading a book when
I
he
know,
tries to do it.
right?
My son earlier goes, "It seems like you just want me to go away." And I said, "I do. I just told you not to distract me."
I love you, but you got to go.
Right.
Well, so that is it for A Light in the Flame. definitely read it if you haven't. Although we already told you everything about it. So I guess.
Hopefully you read it before that
Hopefully you read it, before you listen to this whole episode. But next week, we will be back to A Court of Thorns and Roses. We are going to be talking about chapters 18 and 19.
Can't wait.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.